To overestimate the size of the sun, and you don't want to measure the size of the sun by observing the sun directly. Again, remember, you can observe the moon the same way. The sun and the moon are really only about the size of your little finger held at arm's length. So imagine your pinky fingernail at arm's length. That's how big it is. And if you do this right now, if you reach out and you look at your pinky, it's kind of hard to believe. Your fingernail looks way too small compared to the view that you think you get of a full moon, for instance. But don't take my word for it here. Try it yourself with a moon. Don't try it with the sun. Try it with the moon. Yeah, that's right. Chris reminded me that just when we were looking for Baily's beads going in, we'll be able to see Baily's beads going out. Now, when the disk of the moon first touched the sun, that's known as first contact. And then when the edge of the moon first got completely inside the disk of the sun, that was known as second contact. And that happened just a few moments, or actually a few minutes ago. It's hard to believe. It feels like just a few seconds have gone by. And now we're coming up on third contact. And there we go. And a little bit of Baily's beads action there. And now we're out. We're at third contact now. Fourth contact will be when the moon actually uncovers from the disk of the sun. The last contact will be the moon moving off the disk. And that will be it. Now, something I didn't see, but might have happened here, I just got all caught up here. Actually, I take that back. I do see this. There are a bunch of birds flying around all of a sudden. And these are birds that were not out a moment ago. What happened is there were a lot of bugs here that all of a sudden thought it was getting dark, thought it was evening time. And that's the time then these critters actually come out. The birds come out as well. So there's some very confused bugs and birds out here. They'll probably get it sorted out in a few minutes. But it's going to start to brighten up again. And as it starts to brighten up, then these bugs and birds are going to realize that it's in fact daytime, go back to sleep or become quiet. Then they'll be out again in a few more hours, confused about how short the day seemed to be and why there was a night in the middle of the day. Yeah, we did hear some birds singing a little bit before, and there's some flying around, so I guess they're having a snack. Now something else here. And again, I'm giving you my perceptions as we go through. This is profoundly non-scientific. This is more of a psychological exercise than a scientific one. But all of a sudden, it appears that it's getting brighter. I can't give you any quantitative numbers. If we had a photocell connected to a multimeter, we could have measured the amount of solar energy coming down. We could have plotted a curve for that. And I know there's some people, there's someone from JPL who's actually in Denver right now who is collecting sky measurements of the sky and of the ozone content, and I'm sure he will see the light input drop down, and we'll try and have his results, and we'll follow up on another show, along with photographs of the eclipse that we'll be able to view. And it's appeared almost as if there was a cloud blocking the sun, and that cloud has moved slightly off the sun. Now, something that did not happen here, we did not see the sky go completely dark. If the moon had been farther, actually closer to the Earth, like Chris said, if it had been closer to perigee, or actually even a little bit closer, the disk of the moon would have fit perfectly over the disk of the sun. Now, the last time that happened anywhere nearby was July 11th, 1991. The eclipse shadow moved across Hawaii and through Baja California and then to the south, and the western United States had a partial eclipse. But if you've been in that eclipse path, anywhere in that eclipse path, the sunlight would have been blocked out. The disk of the sun would have been blocked out. You would have been able to see the fuzzy outer atmosphere, the corona that Chris mentioned, and you would also have been able to see stars. And right now, we were not able to see stars, of course, because the disk of the sun was not blocked out. The sky was still very much bright. But the sun is close to the Pleiades star cluster, the Seven Sisters, and the planet Mercury. And both of those objects are in the constellation of Taurus, and so is the planet Venus. Now that means that you can get a sense of the astronomical nature of all this by taking a look tonight. As the sun sets, you won't be able to see the crescent moon just yet. It'll probably be a little bit too close to the sun. But as you look a little higher in the sky, look for sort of a fuzzy smudge. If you're not located in a city, that fuzzy smudge through binoculars will reveal the Seven Sisters. And in fact, through binoculars, you'll see there are a lot more than 7 of those sisters. And then Mercury will be close by, and very bright in the evening sky will be Venus. And if you look a little bit, maybe a little bit over to the left of Venus, you'll see a bright reddish star. That's Aldebaran in the eye of Taurus the bull. So you have a star chart. Go take a look at these objects tonight. You'll be able to see also Orion, the mighty hunter. You might be able to see the constellation of Auriga and the star Capella, the Gemini twins, Canis Major with the star Sirius, which is the brightest in the sky. So you've already made your commitment to astronomy today by observing this eclipse, either directly or with us. Might as well let it continue into the evening hours. And hopefully your weather is good enough you'll be able to actually observe these and be able to go out and observe the motion of the moon, like Dawn mentioned, over the next several nights and see the moon climb higher and higher in the sky, in the evening sky, away from the sun. In fact, in a few nights, the moon is going to be very close to the planet Venus, and they should make a nice pair in the evening sky. Oh, we can see Venus? Where? All right, Chris reported was able to see Venus here. Now, as I look up to the sun, what I'm doing is I'm putting my hand in front of the sun to block it out, and Venus is following the sun across the sky. Now, do you remember what the separation is? You said about 28 degrees. All right, it's going to be it's a challenge to find this because the sky is still quite bright. It's a really beautiful blue color. This is a personal challenge now. Go out there and try and find it. I look at the horizon. The horizon is bright. The sky itself overhead is a beautiful sort of deep shade of blue, and then it brightens up again as we get close to the sun. Very unusual. Yeah, now the shadow, the annular phase, is finished for us here, but it's sweeping across the surface of the Earth. In fact, it's sweeping across quite rapidly. It's going about 1,673 kilometers per hour, or about just over 1,000 miles per hour as it sweeps across the surface of the Earth. And it's heading probably out into Lake Erie now, and it's going to be heading, touching through Canada, Toronto, and then on through Maine, then a little bit more of the Canadian Atlantic states, and then into the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the eclipse shadow is wider at some points. It was about 167 miles across when it crossed El Paso, Texas, and it narrowed down to 143 miles where we were. And that's because we're actually closer to the moon in Ohio than we are if you follow the curvature of the Earth around to Texas. And I see Venus. And now that I see Venus, I'm amazed I couldn't see it before. It's a bright star in a deep blue sky. And as I block out the sun with my hand, there's sort of a ring around the sun, a bright band around the sun, and Venus is right on the edge of that. And it's quite plainly visible. And I'm sure that if I continued to view it for some period of time, I'd be able to see it as the sky got brighter, but it'd become more and more difficult. So I have a chance to view a planet here. Give this a try. Again, you have to have a pretty good eclipse view to see this. And the eclipse maximum is passed for anyone that's located on a line perpendicular to us on the map. So from going down to Florida, Florida is just past maximum eclipse. The eclipse shadow is now moving rapidly, again, over 1,000 miles an hour as it moves to the east and a little bit to the north. Well, I don't know how this is for you viewing at home, but this has been a real kick in the pants for us here. I'm having a great time. This was definitely worth traveling here. The sky is still pretty dark. It's starting to brighten up a little bit, and that's why the picture you're looking at is dark. Again, it's not your television, it's not the camera, it's the fact that there's less light coming out of the sky. Now, about 94% of the sun's disk was covered at maximum. Now, that doesn't mean that 94% of the sun's light was blocked out. It was about 89% of the sun's light blocked out, but the moon fit across 94% of the sun's disk. So when you knock down about 10% of the sun's light, that means that, of course, there's less falling on the surface of the Earth. Now, our eyes and many camera systems will focus automatically, so little subtle changes aren't particularly noticeable. This, however, is noticeable. And again, it might be quite dramatic the way you're viewing it, the way you saw a moment ago on the camera. You might have been able to appreciably notice the fact that it was darker. And we're just extraordinarily lucky here. The weather is just crystal clear. Sometimes what happens is when the air cools, clouds form. And that's the behavior of water vapor, and many times you will see air as it rises up on mountains. The clouds will form on those mountains, and as they form, of course, then they can bring rain, and the wet side is going to be the windward side. The lee side will dry out. But we're here in Ohio where it's relatively flat, so there's none of that effect carrying the air up. So we've got perfect skies here. Now the air itself could cool. That simple cooling could result in clouds. And it wouldn't have been out of the question, considering there was some water vapor aloft, that the small puffy clouds that we had occasionally could have formed into more substantial ones and really blocked us out. Just didn't happen. We just have an extraordinary, beautiful view, beautiful clear skies. And again, I'm gonna squeeze off another couple of pictures here. I've got a filter on this camera, and this has got a 200mm lens. The light is not particularly, the image is not particularly large in the field of view, but I'm going to make adjustments to the speed as I go through. And by making these adjustments, then I can be pretty confident that I'm going to get at least some views. Another telescope system that I used was actually a 1000mm lens. It was a small telescope with a camera back fitted to it. And this also has a filter on it. It's, again, a telescope. It's concentrating the sun's light and squeezing it down. So it's been very important that I have this filter in place. But as the light would shine through, the light is being rejected before it ever gets into the telescope. 5-inch mirror down here, the light bounces forward and then into the camera. And as I went through, I went sort of click, 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 click to make sure that I was making all the exposures, the complete range of exposures. And I have no idea what I got, but I know that I got something somewhere in that series of photographs. And I'm extremely excited to see how that turns out. And I'm going to take it to the best photo lab I can find, because it's very difficult to get eclipse pictures like this. Now, we're not done as far as this eclipse is concerned. It's going to be another hour or so before fourth contact, or before the disk of the moon moves off of the sun. But there's another event coming up, and that is a lunar eclipse. In 2 weeks from now, on the 24th, what we're going to have is the moon moving into the Earth's shadow. Now, the moon is in orbit around the Earth. Right now, it's in the front of the sun, and it's going to be moving across the sky. It's going to be moving around into the Earth's shadow. And as it moves into the shadow, right now you can see someone projecting an image through a telescope. Again, this is a perfectly safe way to view. Looking in the telescope would be very dangerous, but the projection image like that's very safe. But if the moon is in orbit, right now, of course, it's in front of the sun. It's going to move off the disk of the sun and continue around, and in 2 weeks we're going to have a full moon, and the moon is going to move into part of the Earth's shadow. That's going to be the evening of March 24th. It's actually going to extend a little bit into March 25th for viewers on the East Coast. So it's an evening eclipse for the West Coast. It's a late night eclipse for people on the East Coast. And that's related to this. And in fact, there's going to be another eclipse somewhat related to this coming up in about 18 years and 11 days. It's something called the Saros cycle. Saros is Greek for repetition. And what the Saros cycle is an alignment of the sun and the moon and the relative orbits that result in the alignments very similar to what we had before. The eclipse that's next in the Saros cycle is going to be on May 20th in the year 2012. So mark your calendars. But since it's about a third of a day off, the eclipse is not going to sweep across us here in Ohio. It's going to sweep across the Pacific Ocean and end in California. It's going to be another annular eclipse, and it's going to be the moon setting into the ocean, and the eclipse will end in Sacramento. Sacramento is the state capital of California, so it's going to be partial for people in the western United States, but that eclipse is going to be related to this one. And of course, eclipses come in cycles because the orbits of the planets, and or specifically in this case, the sun and the moon, are very well known, very well balanced. Now, annular eclipses are going to become much more common, and solar eclipses, total solar eclipses, are going to become much rarer because the moon is actually drifting away from us. It's not drifting very rapidly. It's about 1 mile, or about 1.6 kilometers, every 28,000 years. So a mile per 28,000 years doesn't sound much, considering the moon is over 240,000 miles away. But it's enough that in a billion years, the moon will be about 15% smaller. Now you can see right now the moon did not fit across the disk of the sun. We happen to be alive at a point in time of several hundred years certainly, but a point in time where we can actually see total solar eclipses. That will not be possible in matter of hundreds or thousands of years. So another reason to be glad. Not only are we around at the time where we can see eclipses and we can bring them to you on TV, but also it's something that is a very unusual, very rare planetary alignment. And in fact, there's no other planet where the moon fits directly in front of the sun. Jupiter has got 16 moons, Saturn has 18, but those moons are tiny compared to the size of the planet. So if you're on the surface, the moon's being comparatively close, the sun being so far away it's small, it just doesn't line up, it doesn't fit. There are places in space where you could go to create that, but you'd have to have a spacecraft that was able to maneuver around, and we don't have much of that right now. Now, we have to thank a whole bunch of people here. We have to thank the University of Toledo for providing the video connection. We have to thank Don and the Ohio Turnpike Astronomical Association for providing the site and for their support. And, of course, NASA Lewis for quite a bit of support, and all my guests and the people that have tracked this. We've had a wonderful time here, and we're just delighted that it's gone so well and that the eclipse has been so cloud-free, and that it's been so easy to observe how it's been cool and breezy, and the sky is just beautiful. The sun is much brighter now. Venus is a little harder to see. In fact, I'm going to have to hunt around in the sky to find it a little bit, but this has just been a really, really special event, and we thank you for joining us. And that's all for this very, very special episode of the inappropriately named The Night Sky.
And Commander Brian O'Connor leading the crew out.
Stand by one, Jim.